With the Darknights Memoir event, we've learned so much more about W, her past, and her intentions. There are some people who started saving up for her the moment she was announced on CN, so I'm sure that what we now know about this fan-favorite character was welcome information, so let's go over it. When W did first come out, quite a few people on global servers were extremely confused as to why. Pretty much all we knew is that she was probably a member of Rhodes Island in the past due to some things that were said way back in Chapter 1, but despite this, quite a few people assumed that the only reason she was now playable was because of fan servicey reasons. I think that now we all know that was pretty far from the truth. Different than my fandom video, I'll only be covering her lore in this and not what the actual unit does since there's quite a bit to talk about, plus I'll be uploading an overview of W and Weedy fairly soon, so I don't want to repeat myself. Also, a couple quick side notes, B-A-B-L-E can be pronounced either Babel or Babel, I pronounce it like the latter, and I-N-E-S can be pronounced either Ines or Ines, I pronounce it like the latter, once again because that's an actual name. Maybe her name is pronounced Ines, I don't know. Whatever. Let's get into it.
Access granted.
サルカズの傭兵 W よ。本当にお久しぶりね。って言っても、あんたが思う久しぶりとは意味が違うかもね。でも別にいいわ。今のあんたは、私が探してたあんたじゃないから。今のところは安全ってわけ。そう。今のところはね。
File loading.
If you take a fallen man's belongings, as long as you have the required skill set, you also take his identity. That's how W was born. The original W was a mercenary who fought for his comrades till the bitter end, until a certain Sarkaz woman found his corpse and took his weapons for herself. She could have easily just up and left after this, but chose to follow the two other mercenaries instead. Thankfully for her, one of them, Hoderer, thought she could be a valuable asset. Not only did she manage to keep up with them for all this time, but she could also serve as a local guide when needed. The woman was clearly experienced. Leaving her behind would be a loss for everyone. Oddly enough, she had quite a few similarities with the first W. Hunting people for fun, doing whatever she wanted, and most importantly, always having something to hide. Even while working together with others, they were still independent people, different than the overabundance of puppets that the other warriors and mercenaries were. This is what called him to her the most, what actually made her W. While Hoderer accepted her fairly easily, things weren't quite the same with Ines. Her arts abilities allowed her to sense things within W that made her extremely suspicious, and saying that they didn't get along well would be underselling it. She viewed her as too qualified to be a simple mercenary, an expert in explosives that turned the battlefield into a sea of flames. W wasn't trusting of her either, believing that after a certain incident, Ines and Hoderer were the ones who'd leaked her position. Whether this was true or not wasn't all that important. It was enough to spark a spar between the two and a further discussion, leading W to reveal that she had originally approached them in hopes of bringing in Hoderer's head for a hefty bounty, but viewed joining them as being the more advantageous option. Things obviously weren't easy in the middle of a war. Suspicions of betrayal and general distrust were commonplace, not to mention the ambushes. Despite managing to get out alive various times due to her expertise in explosives, one of these ambushes seemed almost inescapable. W was severely wounded and originally left behind as a live bait, even though she managed to kill some of the enemies and Ines ended up showing up again to stop a Sarkaz warrior who was about to end her life. Reinforcements showed up and it seemed like they really wouldn't stand a chance. Just then, the previously malfunctioning comms started working again, Hoderer saying that someone was coming to save them, and as promised, someone appeared, a slender woman with white hair, who was able to stop everyone in their tracks just by being there. This was Teresa, the king of Kazdel, the sovereign of all Sarkaz, and most importantly, a member of Babel. W had passed out on the battlefield before this, but when she finally woke up, she was inside a landship, one that all of us doctors are quite familiar with. Her first encounter with Teresa wasn't one that you'd usually have with nobility. She wasn't doing anything grand, instead just trying her best to fix a janky automatic door. Seeing the leader of her people tending to such a little thing was enough to make her laugh, not out of disrespect or belittlement, but out of fascination and admiration. To W, Teresa was much more than just the king of her people. She's the first sarcasm W has ever encountered that doesn't have an ounce of murderous intent in her eyes. This hateful look instead being replaced by sorrow and naivety. She grows to respect her more than anything she ever could have imagined, for the first time in her life actually wanting to see someone be prosperous and happy. Devoting herself to Teresa meant devoting herself to Babel, and honestly, she didn't really mind. This is all to say that once Her Majesty dies, she doesn't really take it well. Her newfound desire in life was now gone, and while before any of this ever happened, W's psyche was already a little bit off. To paraphrase one of the Sarkaz warriors she killed, she had gone so mad to the point where she simply lost touch with any of her emotions. Although now, W had found a new desire, to enact vengeance upon those who had a role in Teresa's death. One of these people being the new king of Kazdel, Teresis, but another, much more accessible person being Tallulah. W joined Reunion along with Ines and Hoderer, but never let this ulterior motive slip her mind. After all this time, she remains loyal to Babel. The fact that it's Rhodes Island now is just something she has to accept. If you remember the much earlier chapters, W had a chance to kill Aranakiel but chose not to, as well as letting the Rhodes Island main force walk away due to her feeling nostalgic. And this was all coming from someone who kills for fun. Now that she's back, it's pretty needless to say that no one really trusts her all too much. Most operators keep their distance from her, and one is even keeping tabs on her at all times. Her past alliance means close to nothing to others, since she has one too many loose screws in her head and has been working with the enemy for quite some time now. Trusting her is difficult, and she feels the exact same way towards us. In Chapter 8, a little more about the Doctor's past is revealed, but it's still pretty shrouded in mystery. We're not the same person we used to be, and if we ever start to regain our memories, it's tough to tell if we'll be safe from W or even from ourselves. For now, we'll just have to take things as they come, and try our best to not let our suspicions of this enemy-turned-ally get the better of us. And that was it. Before this event, I was pretty neutral on W, but now that we know more about her, I'm crossing my fingers that the multiple free rolls we'll get is enough to let me bring her home. Because after trying to get Phantom, let's just say it won't be ready to roll for quite some time. If you're subscribed, you probably noticed that I didn't upload last week, and while I'm super sorry about that, I wasn't really doing all too well mentally, and if I had forced myself to make a video then, it wouldn't have turned out all too good. But because of that, I didn't get the chance to thank you all for over 1,000 subscribers. Like, that's actually insane. I know that in YouTube terms it isn't much, but try to imagine 1,000 people inside your house. I don't think you'd all fit in here. I'm so incredibly grateful to every single one of you, and I hope you stick around so we can hit more milestones together. When I first realized that hitting 1,000 would even be a possibility, I thought that a reasonable goal would be to try to get there by the 1-year anniversary of my first upload, which is now over 8 months away. So seriously, I thank you all so much. One quick fact about W, one of her voice lines when she's in the base actually references the door that Teresa was fixing when they first met. I just think that's a cute little detail, and I'm really glad they did that. Nice little throwback for anyone who read through the event. And one last note, whether you celebrate Christmas or not, happy holiday season. I hope you all have a great time and stay cozy. Anyways, that's all I have to say. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you another day.